evening from Dubai and good morning from Las Vegas. Events show a wide spectrum of types based on their nature, size, professionalism, and volume. In recent times, many tourism service providers and organizations are specializing in organizing and conducting special events like community fairs and local festivals, thereby attracting local communities, visitors, while providing social and economic benefits to those communities. Unfortunately, we are living through an unprecedented crisis that the world economies are currently facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with tourism being one of the most negatively affected sectors globally. With travel and tourism accounts for some 10% of global GDP and 1 in 10 jobs. As many as a third of these jobs, or more than 100 million positions, some 2.7 trillion in GDP could be at risk as a result of the current crisis. Right in the middle of that is sitting the events industry. And by that, I mean big trade shows, live events, conferences, business tourism, even weddings, birthday parties, private events, everything. So events are considered to be integral part of our industry. They are experiencing massive turmoil in the form of cancellations or postponements thanks to the recent outbreak. And with these cancellations are also coming, a lot of distress, and at the same time, some innovation as well. And there's a buzzword that is out there, or something that people can fear or embrace. It depends on where, in which part of the world you are located in, and how advanced the tourism or events industry is in that region. The buzz is about the hybrid or virtual events. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Julius Solaris, Head of Engagement of Swapcard, which is famous for end-to-end event and community engagement and platform for virtual and hybrid events, powered by artificial intelligence. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Sumaira. Such a pleasure to be with you today, all the way from Las Vegas.
Thank you so much, Julius. And I know it's early in the morning, and I am so grateful that you are part of our talk today. But I think it's an important discussion to be had, because what I would really hope today from this talk is to unravel and unpack or demystify a little bit the hybrid or virtual events industry. There are some organizations who are embracing it, but there is a bit of a fear as well. So I'm really happy to have this discussion with you. And there have been many postponements of mega events in the world. For example, Olympics 2020, Euro 2020, Union of European Football. There's been ITCMA China, Singapore Air Show, International Exhibitions Logistics, IELA, National Association of Travel Agents. They have been canceled. Everything from Beijing, China, Singapore to Asia, to Europe, to North America, events have been canceling all around. But having said that, at the same time, there is an upsurge we have seen on the social media of online events, and gradually the world is coming to terms with this new functionality of virtual events, and organizations are beginning to embrace it. There was a bit of a delay in the take-up, but when it did happen, it really has taken off like nobody's business. But at the same time, there are organizations who fear this because they fear that ill wipe of face-to-face events. We'll come to that, but tell me first, what is Swapcard all about? Because I know you've just recently transited into this organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to mention that. I've been editor of eventmb.com for 14 years, one of the leading publications for the event industry. So I've been doing a lot of research and content for event planners all around the world. And as of 3 weeks ago, I joined Swapcard, one of the leading virtual events platforms. It actually comes from live events. So we are a technology for live events, for large trade shows, in form of a networking app. But obviously, as many technology companies, in March 2020, we pivoted to a virtual event service platform where event planners could host those canceled or postponed events in a virtual format with a lot of the things we like to enjoy about in-person events, such as networking, exhibitor booths, ways to connect, community element. So we built this platform in the space of 1 month, and had extreme success with it. A lot of events are now running. Actually, the Dubai World Exhibition will run on Swapcard.
Oh, great.
South by Southwest, one of the largest technology event, is going to be held next week on Swapcard. So very large, 100,000, 1 million attendees at the same time type of events run on our platform. But we come from live events, so we cannot wait for live events to be ready. Actually, 3 weeks ago, we had our very first in-person event that we supported in Dubai, actually. So we were involved with that, and we can wait for the next phase of virtual, which we're going to talk about. But we're a company committed, yes, to the virtual revolution, but to go in person as soon as possible.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm glad to hear that my city is already engaging with organizations like yourself, and I'm sure that you must be seeing a region to region distribution and a take on your product, so to speak. Where some regions um, quicker and nimbler to take on such propositions. So you're perfectly placed to tell me that what is the outlook for the event industry and the future of this industry going forward.
Absolutely. Well, there's one certainty about what we're living in right now. There is no certainty. That's unfortunately what the scenario is, which may sound like cliche, but I've been following this on a reporting level from the very get-go, from February 2020. I've been among the first announcing that wasn't looking good for many events in our industry, and that virtual events probably should have become like the norm. And that's unfortunately what happened. A lot of people thought that by summer 2020, we would have recouped and restarted, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, Western countries. We were all thinking like it's going to be 3 months. After 3 months, we're going to go back, and that's going to be it. It's going to be a nightmare that we put behind us. So that obviously kind of started to happen during the summer, with some little events happening in North America, in Europe, some bigger events as well in Europe, in Germany, I'm thinking. But then again, as soon as September started again, we saw second wave coming up, and once again, a great deal of uncertainty. Therefore, making predictions, it's extremely tough. It's got to be said that in some places in Asia, events are actually happening in person right now, where containment strategies have been more effective than where, in other countries where obviously both, there's two elements to look at really: the spread of the pandemic and the rollout of the vaccine. Those are really the two elements we can only look at for a positive impact, and predicting what a comeback could be and what an outlook could be. I can tell you the last research we did for EventMB just before I left said that essentially 30% of event planners would look at Q4 2021 as a potential comeback to some form of live events, and another 30% at the first half of 2022 as a potential comeback. So we're in this for the long run. That's why it becomes so important to think about the strategy for in-person activations, whatever they are, as you mentioned, whether it's a trade show, whether it's incentive travel. Obviously, I look at the business event side of things, so I'm outside of the sporting/wedding concerts, which is an industry that by all means is struggling like never before. But this is to say that really what we should look at, we can't cancel and postpone forever. We
Right.
can cancel and postpone for 2, 3 years. We're going to lose a lot of brand equity with event brands that have been built through the years. Therefore, it becomes important to understand what the options are in terms of pivoting to virtual, or thinking about hybrid, or the hybrid strategy that can become virtual should local governments not allow for in-person meetings.
Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining that. So, so do you think that going forward, among the countless difficulties that the pandemic has brought upon the business, hosting live events, what will be the biggest challenge? Because of the concern of the spreading of the virus, venues are closed, many large gatherings. What approach to be pivoted to save the event industry? What is this one thing that could really, really be a game changer?
It is a very complex question, because there's no, an easy answer, right? The easy answer is, cancellation, eradication of the virus. That's the only ultimate solution. But said that, there are things that can be done. There are meetings that can be held in safety. As we see capacity going up, in some states here in the United States of America where bans have been lifted. Therefore, people can start to meet again in restaurants, in malls. Why can you not replicate the same type of experience in a very controlled event environment? This is the distinction to make. A lot of people think that a trade show is like a concert, right? A trade show is not like a concert. It's a controlled environment with security measures in place, where people don't stick to each other, in a very, very large environment where there's a lot of square footage per attendee available. At a concert, obviously, that's not the case, right? But everybody's sticking together and the rules are much more relaxed. Therefore, what is the business events community is advocating right now is really for a safe comeback, because that's possible. So there's a whole new set of measures in place to make sure that the security of attendees is taken care of, from screening at the door, test screening at the door, to having ambassadors going around at events and making sure that people respect distancing protocols, to obviously wearing masks and disinfecting, to thermal scanning. There's a lot of measures in place today, but there's one thing we have to deal with, right? We have to deal with the stigma that events have had for the past year, right? Events have been associated with the spreading of the virus in many cases. Therefore, there's a big piece that the international events community needs to do in terms of making people feel safe to go back to events, especially when it gets to business events, making companies feel safe to send their employees to attend events. Because if that travel element, and we're talking obviously travel here as well, doesn't come back, then at the same time, obviously events will not be able to come back, because travel and events are extremely linked together. Companies, employees need to send, companies need to send their employees to events in order for the machine of events to work. Therefore, it's very important that, obviously vaccinations are taken care of as soon as possible, and that the big numbers start to go down. There's always going to be risk associated with an event. You can go to an event, eat something out of a buffet and feel sick, right? But it's how you minimize that risk. That's going to be the big piece for the industry going together. And we're in the long term. We're not going to say, I don't believe in saying, let's pick up a month in January 2022 and say, this is when it's going to happen. It's impossible to say. We're in for like a 2-3 year stretch here.
Right. Okay. Thank you for unpacking that. Could you little bit elaborate for me on the leading all-in-one virtual and hybrid events platform?
Sure. So what happened in February, March 2020 really was this wave of cancellation, this wave of postponement. But a lot of us in the industry realized that in order to keep things going, in order to keep brands alive, in order to keep engagement at a brand level or at a company level going with attendees, you cannot really replace the need to meet. So we can surely say we cannot meet in person, but we still need to meet. So that's important for us to understand. There's a intrinsic human need to get together. And, you cannot do that through an email. You cannot do that through just, text conversation. It's got to happen in person in some capacity. Therefore, a lot of events platforms have been able to offer tools that we used to use in a live environment to actually meet online in a more structured way than just a regular Zoom call. So with more tools to create an experience around the online meeting. Because the problem with a lot of this great technology that we have today, like Zoom, like Google Meets or Cisco WebEx, you name it. So meeting technology, fantastic way to connect and to talk. But events are not just connecting and talking, they're more than that. It's about, it's an overarching infrastructure that needs to happen for a business event to take place, meaning that there are categories such as exhibitors, for example, sponsors, that are very important for so many events, right? There's ticketing to be taken care of.
Tell me something. Why would
Sure.
sponsors want to sponsor online events? Where is the ROI? Do you think the ROI is the same as face-to-face events? I've heard this around, for a few of the sponsored events that, there's a struggle to get the sponsors on board. How to educate the sponsors for something like this?
We got very mixed feedback on this. We got the people, like you said yourself, that complain about how tough it is to get sponsors involved. But mostly to me, it's because of lack of really a virtual driven design. And when I say design, I'm thinking about, the mechanics of how we plan an event. Rather than the core, right? So how we design an event and we make it sponsor friendly and we give enough opportunities to sponsors. So can you compare an in-person event to an online event? No, absolutely not. I think this is the basic mistake a lot of people did last year when they started to translate their in-person experience to a virtual experience. They're two separate things. One thing is in-person experiences and one thing is virtual experiences. Virtual experiences have their own rules. You know that I can give you an example of that. Think about an in-person conference where the opening keynote is 1 hour long. You cannot have the same in virtual events because after 20 minutes, people just start to blank out watching it online. So there's different rules. And the biggest, where we see a lot of event planners actually having extreme success with sponsorship, extreme, like way more than they used to have in monetary terms with in-person events, is whenever they really, first of all, pick a platform that allows them to activate more complex sponsorship, but then they understand also the medium of virtual events, which is more similar to online marketing, right? To advertising on social media, advertising on Google, doing media campaigns online. It has its own sets of rules. But where is the opportunity? The opportunity is that everybody's working from home right now. And events, all of a sudden, an event that used to have 500 attendees in person have 5,000 attendees in person. So you have a much wider reach capabilities. And those events,
I think the speed to get the messaging out is much more faster, right?
absolutely, 100%. But once you put that message out, the opportunity becomes to reach an incredible higher number of people that you would not do in person. And all of a sudden you have the ability to deliver to these sponsors a way bigger number of leads, a way bigger number of interactions and brand impressions, whatever you're trying to sell to sponsors, you have much bigger numbers. So the opportunity on paper, it's much bigger, right? It's just how you design it that we see a lot of people succeed or fail, depending on how well they understand the task at hand and the opportunities that virtual event platforms offer right now to sponsors. For example, you mentioned artificial intelligence. This is a way where we've seen a lot of success for sponsors to be connected with the right people in an event based on their preferences and their likings, and have meetings, one-to-one meetings to discuss business and to make business happen. So we've seen an incredible amount of success from those event planners that really mastered the use of artificial intelligence to connect these two parties, because this business has to happen.
So what I'm hearing from you, Julius, is that we need to compare apples with apples here. Not to compare the live experience with the virtual experience. They are two completely different things, and with a very different sets of rules for both the activations. I think that's where the hesitation has been, that transition that few companies have been able, event organizers have been able to make that transitions, and are comfortable with the transition, whereas the others are lacking behind and they're still with the old school. I would now call that old school, because in your opinion, is hybrid and virtual here to stay? Because there is a lot of talk that once the face to face comes, it will start replacing the virtual and hybrid all over again.
Yeah, that's a very common way of thinking within the events in person community, and this is not the first time, by the way, we were thinking that way, because I remember, I'm old enough to remember when social media started in the late 2000s, so 2008, 2009. I remember the conversation about these social networks coming up was, but if everybody starts using social networks, we're not going to meet in person anymore, right? That was exactly the same type of thinking. But what we experienced after social networks became so popular is actually the opposite, because what was happening was that I could see these people sharing, these friends or colleagues of mine sharing amazing pictures from Dubai or from the Abu Dhabi marina, taking amazing pictures of the beautiful food they were having on social networks. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to go there. I want to attend. I want to be with them. I'm missing out on something. So this fear of missing out became the major driver to actually attend in person. And social networks were just fueling this need to come together even more. And that's what we're going to see, I believe, with virtual events going forward, right? I believe that the virtual component of a hybrid event, so when we say hybrid, to clarify, hybrid event, to define it, there's different definitions, but what I have in mind is a component of in-person events and a component of virtual event that kind of connect at some stage, right? So there's a intersection of these two components with an event that is happening in person and an event that is happening virtually at the same time, right?
And
So,
a very important distinction, right, between the virtual and a hybrid event, and very
absolutely, yeah. Hybrid virtual event is 100% online. A hybrid event has a component of in person as well, right? So you asked me, what is it going to happen with hybrid? We have to keep in mind that all the factors that we discuss in terms of the outlook and a comeback to events is very important, right? The vaccine, the rollout, the virus going down. So what we can expect going forward is that some events will start again with a component of in-person, and the percentage of in-persons versus virtual is going to vary through the next months, right? We're going to start at a 10% in-person, 90% virtual, 2080, 30-70, when we get to 50-50. And then we'll see at that stage what happens. But we're going to be in 2022 by the time we get 50-50, I believe. So because a lot of people will still fear going in person. A lot of people, especially if you take, more senior audiences, which sometimes tend to be also the decision makers within companies. How can they travel safely if they're the most exposed to the risks of the virus, right? So these are very important questions. So we can anticipate that planners will have to work very, very hard to make sure that both an in-person and a virtual audience are taken care of. Sometimes this can happen. Sometimes they could be merely virtual. That's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Not all the meetings are going to be hybrid going forward. Not all the meetings will need to happen in person necessarily, because if there's one thing we've learned from all this collective experience of the past year is that we understood that some meetings can happen online. We don't need to actually meet in person for those. And those are the small meetings, internal meetings, company meetings where 3, 4 executives have to travel for one day and then come back. There's a lot of waste associated with that. There's a lot of unnecessary travel. There's a lot of stress associated with that. So we know that by now, those type of meetings can happen virtually, right? But if you think about the big activations, the company-wide meetings, the conferences, the trade shows, those will still need to happen in person, right? They still, you need that feeling of being there with a lot of people in your industry and do business, right? In person, because nothing can beat that.
Right. That it's interesting, really, really interesting dynamics are in play, and I'm so glad that I'm having this discussion with you, Julius. So it's established. Going virtual is the hot new trend for our industry, especially for our tourism and event sector, especially. The virtual event increases audience reach. It's established. It expands audience reach beyond specific regions. That's also established. So virtual events reduce cost per head and maximize your ROI. That's established. And virtual events reduce your costs required to arrange traditional in-person events, the flying, the hotel accommodation, and all that's, we can do away with that. The fact that you and I today are talking, you're in Vegas and I'm here in Dubai. So I think this is the gift of the COVID, for us, that the importance of this kind of connection is so important and critical. But however, what do virtual events challenge for the employment of the event workforce? Is it challenging that event workforce? Do you think we are going to do away with certain kind of jobs?
The devastation right now in the workforce in the events industry is unprecedented. There's nothing that we've seen before. It pains me to the core to see how many people are leaving, how much talent is leaving the event industry for good in some cases. Because to be honest, the event industry has never been a particularly uh, it's not like finance, okay? It's one where you need to struggle and work really hard to make it. And it's long hours, it's a lot of travel. So you really have to have a passion for events to be involved in the event industry. Therefore, what we've seen in the past few months is a lot of people that for necessity, not being able to work, changed the industry altogether. We've lost a lot of talent, especially younger people and younger audiences that just joined the industry. It's a devastating sight for many of us that have worked for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years in the industry. Therefore, it is not easy, I must say. And also in the translation, in the first iteration of what planners could do during coronavirus or virtual events, a lot of people are cut out of virtual events. A lot of the infrastructure of events, of the event industry is cut out immediately. Think about venues, think about suppliers, catering companies, design, florals. You can just imagine like whatever happens around an event, performers, entertainers, speakers, all of this, it's immediately cut out. Some of them have more, ways to be involved, like speakers, performers, they pivoted to virtual as well. But honestly, a lot of that part of which makes events possible, they have no chance, simply no chance to be involved in this game until in person comes back. Therefore, that's why you feel that in the industry there are very strong voices that advocate for an in-person comeback as soon as possible, because really businesses have been killed. There's only so much you can do with the government's support around the world in terms of business support. So therefore, after a while, after a couple of years, we've seen some stats from the UK where, they said that if this protracts even for the rest of the year, we could lose potentially 65% of the event businesses in the UK can shut down. So this is like a humongous number, which is scary. Therefore, it's a very delicate moment, but there's positive outlook there as well. There's people that have been able to transition and pivot themselves, their
Right.
skill set, right? And being able to reinvent themselves as virtual event planners. They've been able to actually do extremely well, way better than they used to. That's the other side of the coin, right? There's some people that have been technology friendly from the get-go that are really doing extremely well with virtual events.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. It is devastating the state of the industry, but therein also lies an opportunity, and people who are able to pick up, able to transition over. There is a huge opportunity to be had there. Uh,
Totally.
so people are getting used to staying at home and having everything available at their fingertips on their mobile devices or laptops. Virtual events are a new way of adapting to our digital lifestyle, offering us the flexibility to attend any event in the world from the comfort of our home, from our living rooms, our bedrooms, removing this constraint of traveling. So, what do virtual events provoke? I mean, as a behavioral change in customers, are we going to become lazy? What do you think?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think this is my favorite questions of the ones you've asked me so far, because really what events are about, they're about changing behavior, right? A successful event is not, how many shares on Instagram you got, or how many people came to you and say, "Oh, great event." It's really about how you're able to change behavior in those that are attending according to your original plan. So, what is your objective? How you're going to change behavior, what is the desired behavior you want people to attend the event to have, right? So those planners that think strategically are the ones that really focus on that as the end goal of their event planning activity, right? So I believe that you're 100% right. It's much more difficult to stimulate that change of behavior when we're sitting in our house and we're just watching a screen. And I think that's probably the key that we need to understand to better capture what it really is, the intrinsic opportunity with virtual. So if we, as we said, adapt the old model, the in-person model, to virtual, that's where we're going to struggle, because at an in-person event, I'm involved with my five senses. I'm meeting people. I'm out of my comfort zone in most cases, because I'm surrounded by strangers or some people I may know. There's a lot of serendipity. You're pushing your boundaries of your comfort to make that experience, to co-create that experience and make it happen, right? Um, but what happens, right, with virtual events is that sometimes we translate the in-person to virtual. Therefore, we think that putting together a great content plan, like a conference, for example, having great speakers, is just the name of the game. And we go with that, and people are just watching a TV show that, with all due respects with to the amazing event planners around the world, is nowhere comparable to Netflix or YouTube or whatever, right? So if I have to choose watching two experiences that are just one to many, all of a sudden I start making comparisons with, Netflix or whatever, movies or all of that, or documentaries if we're talking information. Therefore, where's the real opportunity to change behavior? That comes from engaging attendees and making attendees the protagonists of the virtual experience, make them engage beyond the event. You mentioned we are a platform for virtual events, but for community as well. And that's where really the secret sauce of virtual events is right now. Those events that are really being successful are creating a community that goes beyond the one only event, but can go on with multiple events for the year, and where members of the community can start interacting with each other while the event is not happening. They can start creating content together. They can host roundtables together by themselves in
Mini
platforms.
sub events, mini sub engagements within an
Exactly.
umbrella event.
Exactly. That's the key. That's the key to keep the attention high and keep people engaged with what you're doing at all times. Because the more I feel engaged, the more I will own the outcome of the event. I will feel responsible for making it a success. So that's the key for really making it happen in virtual events.
Okay, which gives me, I can segue into my next question here, because what you're talking about is that organizers will have to take more ownership of the success of the events, for everything from exhibitors, sponsors, event design, attendees during virtual events, all of that put together. And when attending an on-site event, the attendees and exhibitors have to have a lot of control over what they do and who they connect with. They can generate new opportunities during the event, from casual introductions on a lunch table, quick chats in the hallway, or catch ups during breaks. Face to face events give us, right, that convenient measure of square footage plus location, and food always adds to that experience. Yeah. But with virtual events, however, how to measure event engagement, and what are the criteria of the measurable attendee value of online events?
Well, first of all, I would say that the measurements piece specifically, it's much easier on virtual events than in-person events, to be honest, because
Really?
as you mentioned,
Give,
oh
give,
yeah,
give
it's
me
it's all
some
controlled.
criteria.
It's a controlled environment, right? Everything is controlled. Virtual event platforms, we're not talking Zoom or anything, give you analytics and
Let's
engagement
start
metrics.
with that. Just one number. Okay, that 5,000 attended or 5 million attended. Is that the only measure?
Absolutely not. For example, I can tell how many people passed by a booth, in a virtual environment. I can tell how many people engaged with the booth. I can tell how many people required a specific lead. I have all these data. The data available, it's incredible. It's like never ever before. If you think about someone passing by a booth in a in-person trade show, how do you measure that? That's much more difficult than someone clicking on a website and looking at a booth specifically. You have that data, it comes with the platform. So the data available is way more. Now, making sense of that data, it's a completely different game though, right? But that's where event planners are struggling right now, because there's so much data available, but then how do we pull it back to the engagement piece? Specifically, I can talk for our platform. We have engagement metrics built in within the platforms. So we say that, for example, how many people looked at a specific session, the ratings of the speaker, all of these are built in within a platform, and they give you an understanding of what is happening there. But we're trying to build a lot for that serendipity that you were discussing about, because we realize that a lot of what we like about events is not necessarily the content program, but it's like really that fortuitous connection that happens at an event. So one of the features, for example, we just announced last week, which I'm very excited about, is our roundtable feature, where after a keynote session, you are allocated to roundtables that can be moderated, and you can engage up to 50 people at the same time, have an open discussion, open conversation that can be audio only or video only. Very important. Audio is becoming extremely important. Not having your video online at all times. We're really in a fatigue of being on always with calls all the time. So having an option to just be there with the voice while you're walking your dog, but still participating in a very serendipitous conversation, meeting people that you didn't know were attending, right? On a very horizontal level. I'm very excited about that.
That's that's incredible. That's you are really unpacking this world for me, and I'm sorry if my questions are very comes from
Oh no, I'm loving them. No,
but
absolutely.
I'm just loving listening to you, because you are really unpacking it for myself. So I mean, this is fascinating. This is really, really fascinating. Like you are speaking to my heart right now, because for me to understand, because we have a large conference, and I'm in my mind, I'm just thinking, what is it that we can apply in our for our own product as well. So when delivering virtual events, cost per visitor drops considerably. We know that, giving organizers unlimited scalability, and you've got all this incredible data to back it up as well. You can do hundreds of events with thousands of attendees at a very, very minimalistic low cost. So putting an event logistics is no longer a barrier to entry. Now it comes down to content creativity, platform engagement and marketing, but most importantly, how you leverage these events into revenue models backed by strong analyticals. So, when is data too much data or too less data? How to monetize that data for the virtual events?
There's a lot to unpack. We could spend an hour just talking about this, but how complex this topic is, because there's a lot of the industries, and this is not a way to dodge the question, by the way. There's a lot of fragmentation in the industry. There's a lot of initiative, and we're in a very experimental moment right now, right? Despite virtual events didn't start in March 2020, virtual events have been around for a while. Okay, but the last year has been a phenomenal acceleration of the virtual events environment. So we've seen more development in the past 12 months than in the past 12 years, probably, in terms of the technology piece for events. Our company got, despite we've been doing extremely well before, we had 400% growth in 1 year. So it's an incredible demand in terms of using these events. So the piece here is one of translation, and we have to be very careful of thinking that whenever we approach the technology piece, it's a cost-free environment. So because it's virtual. So that's one of the most common mistakes that I see in terms of the delivery of something that makes everybody happy, the attendee happy, the boss happy, the sponsors happy, right? I'm thinking about the top 3 stakeholders for most of events. So thinking that I'm going to do a Zoom call and call it an event because it's free and that's it, it's really going to be, it's not going to achieve much, right? But then at the same time, there's got to be some level of investment. That's what I'm trying to say. And the costs are going to be substantially lower, right? But we need to raise the perception that some things are necessary in order to have a great engaging online experience, right? As you would invest in a nice buffet, in a fantastic entertainment piece in person, you need to invest the same for other things. Like, for example, you were talking about food. Some events, they send food to those working from home, right? They send a goodie bag, they send, physical touch points for the event to actually give you that feeling that you're actually doing something, you're touching something. So, obviously not all events can afford that right now, but those events that think strategically about the value of virtual really are engaging in doing a lot of that. First. Second, there's a platform disconnect, I believe, with virtual event technology and event technology in general, because this is a problem that started before virtual, with technology in general for the event industry. There's this whacking of data that comes in these platforms. It's a lot of data, you feel overwhelmed, and you don't know what to do with it. And specifically, I can tell you from my personal experience with our company, what we did is to partner with agencies and contacts that make sense of that data, or build it within the platform with very clear and easy reporting where you can understand the top level reporting very easily. But if you want more than that, and you really want to understand the intricate levels of engagement, we partner with other companies that can use our product to give you very competitive insight about what is happening in a very well presented way. So whether you want to do it self-serve or a more in-depth way that still is kind of reported according to your needs, we kind of work that solution both ways. So in that way, we're able to give a snapshot of everything, or more in depth, if you really want something custom. So that's, I feel, the partnership level. To sum it up at a general level, what should you be looking for? You should be looking for partners that work with you to understand what your objectives are to deliver on a marketing level, on a monetization level, to help you achieve that.
So, and I love the word partnerships, but I think what I'm picking up, Julius, listening to you, is also about education, that we need to educate our customers, our stakeholders, and share more information with them about these platforms, and because I can imagine that many are customers where you have seniors who are leading them, CEOs in their boardrooms, they don't get it, they don't understand. So maybe you need seniors, going in and explaining them also that, okay, you need to buy into this product, because they get scared by people like you in sweatshirts. I have
Absolutely.
to tell you that. It's
That's
it throws
totally
them
normal.
off guard, maybe in some cases, because they don't get it, they don't understand it, they can't wrap their head around it as well. That okay, this is the future, and they need to move with the future. And maybe some of them are also holding these organizations back. So very interesting. So there is one segment. Sustainability has come to the forefront of global issues, right? COVID has also enhanced its value as well, because by not traveling, by not getting on an aircraft, we are talking about global sustainability. We're contributing in a positive way. Businesses are increasingly concerned about the impact of their activities and can affect change by adopting a culture of corporate sustainability. So, planning and executing a green event is an area which was really beginning to grow. I'm talking about for the live events, How can this be easily adopted as a way to begin on the path to sustainability for virtual or hybrid events? When you're planning a green event, virtually or a hybrid, where do you start?
So there's an interesting story I always tell when we talk about sustainability in events. In November 2019, that was the time where I always sit down and I look at the next year and I write what are my top 10 trends for the next year coming ahead. So November 2019, I was writing the trends for 2020, right? And where my top trend for 2020 were virtual meetings and virtual events, um, for completely the wrong reasons. I obviously couldn't anticipate the pandemic in November, but the reason for virtual events to be used was really sustainability,
Yeah.
was really that concept of, and don't get me wrong, virtual events come with their own carbon footprint as well, right? It's
Right.
not like virtual, the technology piece, just because it happens in the air,
Yeah.
doesn't have an impact. It does have an impact as well. So it's important to be aware of that and how to minimize the impact of virtual meetings as well. But obviously, if we compare the waste that comes from, large, humongous events, but also smaller events, I would say, because for me, the need for large events is still going to be there. And, planners need to be clever on how they offset the carbon emissions from those events. But, those internal meetings where 10 people had to travel from all over the world with incredible, waste of travel time and all of that, that to me needs to go. And I believe that is a fantastic opportunity to have a virtual get together. And I believe that more virtual get togethers will happen as more companies are announcing that they're not going back to the office, right? They're giving their employees the option to work from home indefinitely. I
Right.
would say that the same is going to be happening for the event world, in the sense of saying, okay, we have an overarching place, community where we get together.
Mhm.
Then within that community, we will meet in person, we will meet virtually, we will meet in a hybrid format with some people virtually. So the way we meet won't matter anymore necessarily. It's just important that we keep everything together. So that's the mentality I'm trying to adapt right now. And obviously, virtual meetings will be that component that helps to be as sustainable as possible, because a lot of companies by now realize, if you don't want to do it for the environment, you'll do it for the cost. And a lot of people won't be able to afford that level of traveling that we have in January 2020 for the foreseeable future.
I think you're absolutely right, because the companies will question it, right? Businesses will question the need for travel now and weigh
Or
that, from one to another. And do I regret? having this virtual conversation with you right now across the world in Vegas? Absolutely not, you know. Yeah, I would have loved to have met you and hugged you in person, you know.
I'd love to be in Dubai. I miss Dubai so much. So yeah.
Okay, but at least we've met, right? This is a gift.
Well,
This is an absolute gift. So my last question to you, I'm sitting right now at the edge of my chair because I'm enjoying talking to you so much, Julius. But my last question to you is a little bit more philosophical, you know, and it talks to the emotion of our industry. So in your experience, you know, you are the future, 100%. You are the future, you know. And I do share with me those trends that you wrote few what couple of years ago, or 2018.
yeah,
Yeah.
2019 now. Yeah.
It's like looking through the looking glass, you know. Have a look at that. But so what do you think about the future of our industry, the future of the profession of events business, you know? What's your message to aspiring young adults who did want to break into it? And you probably have friends and colleagues telling them this industry is now tanked, don't try to get into it, think of you know, getting into something else. What is your opinion there?
I mean, it's inevitable to say that it is quite messy right now, so it's not easy, right? We're going through the biggest disruption to the industry ever,
Yeah.
so it's easy to say. You know, we've had obviously the crisis, the mortgage crisis of 2008, 2009, but the comeback was much faster. Or the positive signs, or at least there were no existential threats to the industry. We're facing an existential threat right now, in a sense that events are the major culprit for the spread of the virus. So, you know, we're on the front line. We're, as people say, we're the first to go, the last to come back. So, you know, that's what events are unfortunately going through right now. So it's inevitable to deny, like you cannot deny that. That's the hard truth. If the virus would have gone by summer 2020, I would have said we'll go back to business as usual. The protraction of this situation is dramatically changing the event industry for good. There's no way that we're going to go back to what it used to be in 2020. I felt very unsure before saying these words, because in the past I've always felt, and you know, you have to think, for us, I've come to the industry as a disruptor, as someone that embraced technology, as someone that embraced innovation. So we've been trying to instill in innovation in the industry for years, but never ever been successful. The technology piece of events has always been a super small niche, right? All of a sudden, though, that is changing. Technology is becoming prominent. The experience of attendees is changing dramatically. What sponsors are getting is changing. What top executives are experiencing by attending these events is changing. So all of these factors together, you cannot foresee exactly what we were used to in terms of going back. This is what the current investment of capitals is showing right now in the industry, right? So I'm uh, I'm uh, I'm positive that one thing we will keep on needing, and that thing is really the need to meet. The need to meet, that is never going to go away. So and in person has the highest value. That's been proven over and over again. It may be the most difficult to implement, the one with the most nebulous ROI, but we understand it. When we meet in person, it's a completely different story, right? But the new world as virtual is part of it as well. We have to understand that. And the change that we're gonna witness is gonna be prominent. So what's the job at hand for event planners or everybody revolving around the event industry? Think, how can I help people connect? Because people still need to connect right now. So it's about convincing that top executive that comes from a different environment, what's the value of virtual? How can we connect on virtual? That's where the opportunity lies for the wide event industry.
Julius, I can go on listening to you for the next 1 hour also. Unfortunately, we've run out of time here, but this has been a real eye-opener interview. I have enjoyed it. I know that when we will post it, many are going to learn from how candidly how simply you explained, what is the future of events and virtual events or hybrid events, and it is not something to be feared. The pandemic has put restrictions on public movements and limited the functionalities which have affected all sectors, including events industry. But here, therein, with this COVID lies an opportunity, and it has come in the form of these hybrid or virtual meetings. The one that you and I are having is a very small form of it, but you can create this experience online as well. I really like the what you mentioned about that we are competing with our audience, with the likes of Netflix and so forth. So why do we need organizations like yours? Because we need to take that experience to that level, so that that we can deliver the same captivating experience for them, online as offline. So thank
Totally.
you so much. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
and
you.
I wish you all the luck.
Likewise. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. I'm available for anybody that has any question. Julius at swapcard.com if you want to reach out to me.
Perfect. And you will find Julius on LinkedIn as well. Thank you. Thank you.